Welcome to Charts Today, European Opening, and today's edition for Wednesday, the 7th of October, comes to you from Vienna. I'm here speaking at a conference for energy trading today. So we start by looking at the dollar index sinking lower on the US midterm elections. Some surprises from the Democrats winning the House, but the Republicans holding the Senate. So in the end, I don't think the big surprise to the market, but we're just seeing short-term fall in the dollar just on the election jitters, if you like. That's strengthened the euro, and that's given us an upside target of 117 on the euro, but still bearish on that medium-term chart. Against the yen, we're seeing the dollar actually holding its bull trend, although just down slightly this morning. We see a little bit of volatility here around those election results, but the reality is little has changed. Looking at sterling, we're seeing at 131, so sterling pushing higher and actually starting to really make a move against the dollar into bullish territory. And against the euro, we're seeing sterling pushing higher as well, so quite interesting there. And against the Swiss franc, sterling also pushing higher. The Aussie dollar, sterling also showing its strength there as well. Bitcoin up about 1%, so we are just seeing a surprise move to the upside there. So and some new upside targets kicking in on Bitcoin, so looking a little bit better. US stock markets last night were up just under 1% across the board on the indices. We saw the S&P up 0.6%, moving into bullish territory. The Nasdaq also moving to short-term bullish territory, and the Dow actually already in short-term bullish territory, looking a bit better as well. The Russell 2000 also improving as well. The futures this morning, we're seeing the S&P future up 0.1% and the Nasdaq E-mini up 0.2%. So no great heads up as to which way the markets are going to open. Looking at the FTSE future, it's up about 1/3% this morning. And looking at the cash market, the FTSE was down just under 1% yesterday, still in the doldrums, really, European indices. And if we look at mid caps in the UK, also just struggling to move forward. And the DAX and the CAC Quarante also just fairly benign performances yesterday. Tokyo actually was doing quite well today, but just fell away towards the close. The Hang Seng was down 1/4%, and the Chinese market down 0.5%. So no great improvement there. And if you look at the Sensex, it was closed overnight. The Australian market recovering a little bit, up 1/3%. Brent crude still in the doldrums, just pushing lower, and that medium-term chart now becoming quite bearish below the clouds. So we really are now starting to push for these lower targets. $70 looking very likely. WTI also pushing lower, down 61.80, so also pushing lower there as well. US nat gas sitting at $3.50. If we take a look at gold, gold sitting at 12.28, just holding on to its bull trend there. Silver also just struggling to hold on to its bull trend, and US 10-year yield sitting at 3.19%, so just fairly steady. And German bond prices lower. Just taking a look at the intraday charts on some of the tech giants. Amazon still struggling to get above the cloud on that 60-minute chart. Apple also just struggling, up 1% yesterday. Most of these tech stocks up around 1%. Alphabet was actually up 1.5%, but still bearish on the short-term chart. And Facebook also just struggling there. So this data all coming to you from Thomson Reuters Icon, or if you're using Metastock Zenith as a private user, you'll have the same data. Here we're looking at Yahoo Finance data, and I'm just looking at stocks now across Europe. So we can see here the US indices were all in the green, Europe in the red yesterday, and Asia this morning we're seeing the Nikkei, the Hang Seng, and China all down. So we are just seeing some movement there as well. So taking a look at the Nasdaq, we see here some really big performances. Mylan up 16% and Symantec up 12%. So we did get some really big jumps there. But again, a lot of these charts looking quite bullish. If we take a look at the majors, Apple is still this concern. We saw on the short-term chart, not looking great. The relative really falling away there. So Apple is the main thing to watch now. Facebook um, also just struggling at that couldn't get back above 150 last night. So it's off substantially from its high back at around 220. In June, so it's still in the doldrums, to be honest. And looking at Microsoft, we're at 107, was up just slightly yesterday. Netflix was down 1.4%. Nvidia still continues its fall from its peak this year. So seeing stocks that were making amazing strides just coming away. Tesla was down very slightly, holding on to its bullish position, bucking the trend. Taking a look at the Aussie market, we see here Infogen Energy, they're looking very strong, up 11%, but the chart looks terrible, bearish below the cloud. Worley Parsons also big dives in the stock, although we've just seen recent moves higher. Sierra Resources up 8%, but again the stock has dived over the last coming times. Looking on the downside, we still had a lot falling. Webjet down 7.5%. Sigma Healthcare also down. A lot of these stocks really in quite significant downtrends. It's amazing the market indices look as good as they have, to be honest. Looking at the Nifty, it was closed yesterday, as we said, so the performer of the day before was the entertainment. China, we're seeing here a handful of stocks up, but mostly stocks falling in the red there. Hang Seng, again, a handful of stocks up, but a lot more falling. And the Nikkei did have actually quite a lot of good performers, but also in that 225, a lot falling away. So Europe, Asia not looking great. Whether that will spread to Europe, we'll take our cue probably from the futures. Yesterday, AB Foods was up 3%, even though they reported disappointing sales from Primark. M&S report results today, and it'll be interesting to see how they look. The market is pretty bearish on M&S on the long-term chart, and lots of downside targets. So we may see surprises there to the downside. We've got the targets. We'll have to wait and see what the results are like this morning. Direct line was up 1.47%. And if we look at the other end, BT Group, which has been quite a defensive play and turning around, setback of about 4.5%. Morrison Supermarkets down nearly 4% on their results. CRH Group lower. A lot of these charts looking pretty bearish. Even Glencore commodity stock just starting to turn into bearish long-term chart there. Looking at the 250, we've got IWG up 7%, Spire Healthcare up 6%, and the Weir Group up 5%. So we did have some quite good performances in the 250. On the downside, we did actually also have some big fallers as well. William Hill down a massive 6%, really falling lower and looking very bearish on the chart indeed. MediClinic International down 5.7%, and Just Group down 4.7%. So we are seeing still some pretty big falls. In Europe, we had Siemens Renewables up 14%, so a really big jump there, but still the chart looks terrible. Morpho Systems actually looking better than most, was up 8%, still bullish on the long-term chart. And if we look at the bearish end of the market, we saw that we had Zalando down 8.5%, and of course we talked about William Hill. A lot of these London stocks actually looking pretty bearish. That's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. See you then.